ready. Let's go.
Yeah, so to get right into it, first of all, thank you everyone for joining us at Southern Hospitality Weekend. Give a quick round of applause for Larry Morrow for putting this together. Hardest working man in New Orleans. And this panel is titled Ownership, Inputs, Outcomes, and Everything in Between. And essentially, this panel is designed to surface real moments from the journey of each panelist, decisions made with limited resources, imperfect information, and real downside. So the goal is to have y'all walk away with something actionable. You know, I watch a lot of panels. Sometimes I take away some things that I can apply. Sometimes it's a little fluffy. So for this one, we're going to be all action-oriented. We're going to learn through the stories of these gentlemen here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So this conversation is about the inputs, what they produced, and how it evolved their brands. So I want to start with Larry. You know, first and foremost, before you open multiple restaurants, because you've created so many concepts, so many brands, all successful. Take us back to a time when you were building, when you didn't have leverage. Because now, you know, you have all of this notoriety, you got the resources, you got the relationships. Take us to a time when you didn't have that, and how did you navigate it to still see success?
Great question. I would say when I opened up my first restaurant when I was 22 years old, we opened up Larry's Po' Boys and Wings on Canal Street. How many of y'all remember Larry's Po' Boys and Wings? And that was the first restaurant, and back then I didn't have the financials. I didn't have the finances. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have none of the things that I have now. And so it was a tough, it was tough to open up that location because I didn't have the brand I have now. I didn't have the finances. So when we did open up, it did great, but we didn't have the financials to sustain it, you know, for those slower months. And in the industry, you need, you know, to have, you know, resource. You need to have capital to sustain yourself to, you know, get past those you know, crazy months. And that's something that I was unaware of. So at that moment, I realized, damn, you know, I'm not able to, you know, continue to keep this going. And I felt like it was a failed success. I mean, I failed it. But fast forward about until 2018 when we opened up Morrow's. At that time, I went into that knowing from that past, you know, failed restaurant that I needed to have, you know, more cash flow. I needed to be able to, you know, sustain myself for a few months, just say if things were slow. And I was so hungry because of, you know, the losses I took in between. So when we went into that, you know, I had the finances to support me, and you know, it just was a big hit. So I learned so much from that. But when I was able to, you know, build my brand and have financials to really, you know, support it, that's when I saw the most success, because it's not sometime that you don't have the a great concept. It's just the timing is wrong, or you just can't sustain through those tough months. So now that's the reason why I'm doubling back to open up Larry's Po' Boys at the end of this year. First concept we opened, didn't have the resources to do so, but now that, you know, I went and bought the Subway right next to Morrow's, and now we opened up Larry's Po' Boys. So, you know, now that I'm in a position and we've built a strong brand, it's easier to build on top of that.
Great question. Great answer. And to kind of transition and pivot into Rick Ross. So you're also in the restaurant business. You own the Wingstops. And before you owned this, and before you went into the consumer businesses, it was a time when you were the product, essentially. Like, you were selling your music, and you're the one that is being marketed. How did that transition into being the product to now you're selling product, you're deploying capital, and you're dealing with employees?
It's just all about understanding value, transactions. As an artist, I was creating music, I was doing performances, I understood the transactions. And like I just repeated backstage, as an artist, I understood this is really global. A lot of times we may think because we making a mixtape, this just for the hood, this just for the homies, this just for the block. No, it's not. They'll be bumping your shit in London. They'll be bumping your shit in Switzerland. They'll be bumping your shit. You not local. This is not a local game. And once I realized that, I stepped out with my first Wingstop. Like I said, I love the lemon peppers, all flats. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I won't keep it real. I just wanted to pull up in the sports car with my date, let her see, oh, this yours? Better believe it. Yeah. So that was really the vibe, and until I began to understand the dollars. Okay, cool. We start with 1. Let's go to 5. Let's go to 10. We went to 15. You know, we kept going until, you know, we see a lot of success, but you also learn and gain that experience. You got to have an amazing team. Amazing as Larry is, as winning as he is, he got to have that number 2, that number 3 person, those people that's on site, making sure. Because in the restaurant and hospitality business, number 1 is repeat customers. You can't wake up trying to reel in a new motherfucker from out of town every day. No, you got to get the ones that's right around you and make sure they understand and rock with you. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, repeat customers, guys.
Repeat customers. Remember that, y'all. Repeat customers. So, Mike Novo, early in your career, before scale and institutional backing, there were decisions that put your personal capital and your reputation at risk, especially getting into crypto, you know, as early as you did. Talk a little bit about the actions that you made early on that kind of made you stick with that in the midst of so much volatility and untrust in the market.
Yeah, so I grew up as a middle-class kid in Virginia. My dad was in the Army, and I was a wrestler. And the young man from Philly who's got this cheesesteak business that I want to invest in because I really love that guy. He talked about discipline. Wrestling teaches discipline, and discipline teaches you not to be scared, to lean on the front foot. And so the single biggest attribute to success in life is people that aren't scared, that lean in, that are on their front foot. And I learned that, I didn't know I was learning. I learned that through wrestling. You get the shit kicked out of you, you get back up, and you're just not scared. You're not scared to go into new neighborhoods. You're not scared to try new adventures. You're not scared to lean into business. And so it gives you the confidence to try and fail. And so whatever it is in your life that can create a discipline, it doesn't have to be a sport, but it's got to be something that starts giving you confidence to not be scared. And I learned a lot of the panels, they said the same thing. How do you not be scared? It's not easy, right? And so listen, I've had a lot of success in the later part of my life. Part of that was because I was already successful. People are like, oh my God, you made all this money in crypto. I was already rich. And so I bet a lot on it, but it was a small portion of my net worth. And it was easy to ride it up the whole way because I already had money. And so one of the hardest things for people, and why Dave Barry, my friend out there, and I spend a lot of time in underserved communities, is the hardest part of getting started is your grub stake. How do you get a little bit of money so you can start? Because once you have money, money makes money. Confidence makes money. But so, you know, we have a country that doesn't allocate resources equally. It allocates hard work and intelligence and IQ equally, but not resources. And so your challenge, and I'm going to give Larry a shout out often, is how do you get into the network where you can find capital? You know, I have a lot of parties in New York. I'm not really a hospitality guy, other than I throw more parties than probably anyone in this building. I love music, shout out, and I love parties. And once you get on my list, you're always on my list. And I noticed, is that Larry Morrow at my party? He flew up from New Orleans just for this gospel brunch? Again? And so I went to him, I said, Larry, I really appreciate you coming all the way up here in that nice sweater, but like, you don't have to come to every party I invite you to. And Larry was like, you're getting it all wrong. I don't get this network in New Orleans. I don't get Dave Barry in New Orleans. I get this network here. And I grew up in a community that didn't have a Wall Street network, that didn't have access to other people in capital. And so he was the smart one. And just like that boy from Philly said, it's a two-way street. I've taken a lot more from Larry than I've given to him, right? Dave and I were at the Zulu Ball. We were the only two white guys that we could see. That was fun, right? And we're learning. And so, you know, you give, you get. But I think one of the things everyone has to try to figure out is how do you get into the networks where there's capital, where there's ideas, where there's access?
I really like that. And to kind of pivot on it, on how we got into the network with my company, Jam Around, which we just sunset last month, by the way, rest in peace. No, it was a good journey, but we got into the network with Idea Village. And Idea Village, at the time, we had two big exits. So we had Patrick Comer, he exited Lucid at $1 billion, and we had Scott Wolf exit his company Level Set at $500 million. So they put up this big pot of money for this competition, and we wound up winning the competition. It was the largest pitch competition in Louisiana history. We won around $500,000. And that came from being in networks. It's funny because the guy that recruited me was trying to email me for a year, and I didn't even hit him back on the email to where he thought we weren't even interested in it. But, after crypto started crashing and I got out of there, we went into we went into the startup game and got into those networks. So that kind of transitions perfectly into my open-ended question to y'all. For someone who has limited capital, no leverage, like we're in New Orleans, so we're 50th in pretty much, everything. So we have to figure out how to, we have to figure out how to get up from ground zero. So talking to an audience who may not have that leverage, how do we get access to capital if you don't have the plane tickets to go to the party?
I'll say I'm a person who, we've been able to scale our company privately, not, any funding from, investments or anything like that. Been blessed to recently, build a strong relationship with the bank to, get some funding. But prior to that, it was strictly just grinding and just positioning yourself. You got to be intentional. Like Mike just said, I would show up in New York, and it's so many different places I've showed up to network, to build my relationships, because I know so many people down here in New Orleans, but if I want to go to this next level, I got to position myself. So I would constantly travel around the country and be in these different rooms. And when you're in a room, like Mike said, you got to have confidence. And as I started to scale my company, my confidence grew. So when I go into these rooms, I'm not the guy just sitting in the corner. I'm the guy in the room, because I belong there. And so, I would connect with different people, network, and when you do get those relationships, you get opportunity, and you might meet people like Mike, or like Dave, or different people like Ross that may want to invest into your company, like he said. And I think that's how you do it. From my perspective, I've seen so many things become available to me because of the rooms I put myself in. And so if you want to really grow your network, you really got to get outside and network and show up and be present, because nothing's going to come to you if you're just sitting at home.
Anybody else want to take that question?
I mean, it's hard. To start with, it's hard. And so you got to do the best you can with the resources you have to start getting that, I call it a grub stake, that initial amount of capital. You got to get past the point where you're nervous about paying your bills. There are a lot of government programs, there are SBA loans, and so you got to go on the internet and figure out, is there a way I can get money from the goddamn government, state, federal, local? Because there are lots of reasons, lots of ways, if you're a young black entrepreneur starting a new business, that the government will put money into your business. But it ain't easy, and you got to have a good idea. A lot of people want to be an entrepreneur, and their idea is average. And so, I think I've invested in 458 venture companies or small companies. I had my guys count it. And probably 75% fail. And so you also got to be willing to try something and fail. And if there's one takeaway, it's fail fast. If the idea sucks, if you're getting no traction, it's okay to say, yeah, the idea sucked, I'm getting no traction, try something else. But don't just stay dug in because you started. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Right? It's just truth. And so I wish I could have a little magic wand and grant you all success in your businesses. It's just not the way it works.
Rick, you want to take that? For someone who has limited capital, no leverage, what do you think they should do?
When it comes to limited capital, no leverage, for myself, what's always been something I would lean on is I'm going to come into the room with the idea, with the concept. Your idea, your concept, a lot of times that's the most valuable shit you own, you control. And don't be afraid to create a partnership. You know what you're good at, find the other person who's great at what you need to make it happen, and bring it together. A lot of times you create, and you could create different businesses and start new businesses. I've done that a lot of different times. Have an idea, I got this idea. You the one who manufactured the air fryers? Yeah, man, I want to do something like this with the chicken.
One thing that it just dawned on me looking at Rick, because I'm 11 years older than him, and I've had a lot of different successes in business, and he walked into this room, and people are like, that's Rick Ross. He just walked right by me like this. And part of it is have a shtick. don't be scared. I was at the Capitol lobbying for a crypto bill, and I had a bright red jacket on, and every senator was like, oh my God, what's the jacket? I was like, yeah, I want to be noticed. Like, it's okay to want to be noticed.
Facts.
And he does it a lot better than I do it, right? Like, it's okay to want to be noticed. If you have, again, this comes back from the confidence of walking on the front foot. If you've got the idea that you want to care about, yeah, take a little risk. Be noticed.
I like that. So another question back to Rick, we're transitioning into outcomes. So we talked a lot about incomes or inputs, things that were created to develop certain kind of results. So my question to you, Rick, is when you started extending yourself beyond music, which was a minute ago, into restaurants, consumer brands, what did those actions actually produce at first? Like, was it more credibility? Was it more cash flow? Was it pressure? Talk a little bit about the outcomes of your first.
And when you're making investments, it's a little bit of all of it. It's most definitely going to be pressure when it's time to cut the checks, make the moves. Then it's the things that you never put thought into. Me as a, I want to own Wingstops. I never knew I needed an amazing list of managers. I never realized it. I just knew, I want 100 restaurants. And I want a Checkers for the orange French fries. And I went and bought them, you know what I'm saying? But when you sitting back in your team telling you, yo, this shit could be doing a lot better. Okay, what we need to do, okay, these 7 Wingstops are all $1 million franchises. And you see what's in common? Look at these 2 managers. They run these. Oh, okay, so this is what I need to do. I can't find nobody else like them. I'm going to pay them to go and train all my other managers to do it just like this. Yeah. To do it just like this. And with experience, you just learn. You go on and, you got to deal with a few people stealing chicken out the back door and shit like that. Ain't nobody tell Rose that come with the game. They ain't tell me a motherfucker may want to come slip and fall every 6 months. The same motherfucker in the same spot. That's something you got to learn. And Rose learned it.
I keep ripping off Rick because he keeps reminding him of stuff. The other thing that you all have to understand is you can't look at the end game. You got to look at where you are. Like, Rick's made more in chicken than he did in music. It's not where you end up. It's that journey. And so most of you won't be able to do the Wingstop until you have your first victory. I've made more money on my last business, data centers in Texas. I never even thought I'd go to Texas, let alone understand what a data center was, that I did in all my other businesses combined. What gave me the opportunity to be a data center investor, to take advantage of this AI boom, was the successes I had. So you got to stack wins. You got to stack Mondays on top of Tuesdays, on top of Wednesdays, on top of Thursdays, right? You got to keep working. And it's that first restaurant that succeeds, that allows Larry to open his second restaurant and his third restaurant. And you'll never get to your 5th if you're starting to look at your 5th before you built your first. And so focus on the mission in front of you. Focus on the win. Once you get the win, you start walking like, I got this on your second win. By the third win, you're walking into Washington, D.C. Senator's office with a red jacket on, right? You got to build that confidence up. Again, would you ever think you were going to make more money in chicken wings than you were in music? Never, right?
Never. And one thing to add with what you're saying is by the time you make it to your 3rd win, your 4th win, all the other winners who sitting around watching you, now they're approaching you with, yo, I love what you're doing. I would love to be a part of your number 7, your number 8, your number 9, your number 10. So that's what come with winning those first spots, those first restaurants. Larry pulling off those first wins. That's when you get the support from not just the banks, but everybody else up here. I'm sure if Larry wanted to open something in Miami, he already know Rose can't wait.
You sure? I'm gonna call your buddy about that.
He's going to take you on it.
Tell Slab back there, start counting the money, baby, we need it. Poor boys.
That's good. So, Larry, I want to direct the question to you real quick because we're talking about building companies, and I really want to talk about the people because you do employ a lot of people. And when we think about hospitality, it's how you treat people. And hospitality is in every business, because you deal with customers, you deal with employees. How, when things started getting big for you, Larry, were there any adjustments you needed to make? How did you adjust how you handle your employees, how you handle your customers in order to make sure things didn't break?
I mean, it was a fast process because we went from, in 2021, we went from one location to now 2025. Well, in 2025, we opened up 6 locations. So, 6 locations in 4 years. So it was a fast process, so we didn't really, get a chance to perfectly do it, right? We were like flying a plane and we couldn't land it. We just had to keep flying and just making adjustments while we were doing that. But, it made us really want to better our operations because as you're growing, things start to get a lot tougher. So you got to create systems and create just like a blueprint to really, scale your business. So, it became extremely tough. And so to deal with that, we just started to hire more people. We went from having, 20, 30 employees to having over 500. And, you need all of you need managers, you need marketing directors, you need HR, you need all these different things. Because like Ross said, somebody slip and fall every 6 months. And as we grew, every day we had a different problem we had to deal with. We had, like all jokes aside, like we got to have a attorney on standby because people come into your restaurant and sometimes accidents do happen, but then sometimes, people initiate those accidents, right? So, we learned so fast and we had to adjust and get those attorneys. We had to, hire more managers. We had to hire better and build a stronger foundation because if we didn't build a stronger foundation and say, you know what, we're willing to pay more money for better employees, then we wouldn't be here because as fast as you build it, you can lose it even faster if you don't keep the people trust by having the right people in place.
And Mike, I want to know what was an outcome from an early risk that forced you to fundamentally change how you view scale and responsibility. You maybe could talk about it with the data centers, but what is something that made you be like, okay, let me start switching up how I thought business worked?
I'm 61, so I'm a lot older than everyone in this damn room. And you go through phases, right? When you're young, I was young, I didn't have any money. All that mattered was making money. I want to make money so I can take a girl out. I want to make money so then I can buy a house. I want to make money so I can send my kids to school. And you're so focused on making money. The older you get, those priorities change. And you start thinking more about how do I serve? How do I help my community? How do I help my company? And what's so interesting, and I've learned this not through my own companies, but through investing in other people's companies, is that there are some companies, and in hospitality, most of them, where your employees aren't going to get rich. They'll make a living. They'll work really hard to make a decent wage. And so how do you create a culture where they want to be participants, where they want to actually show up? I invested in this young woman's business, and every time I talk to her, she's complaining that, these people called out. I was like, what is called out? Oh, they called out sick. I was like, that's not a thing. Everyone's calling out all the time in her business. I was like, you're doing something wrong in the culture. And my business, no one calls out because we fire them because we pay everyone so much. There's no such thing as calling out sick. I went 9.5 years at Goldman Sachs without a sick day. We'd be really hungover. We'd make the morning bell. We might leave early, but we showed up at work. And so how do you create a culture that people want to be part of? How do you create a restaurant where you got waiters and dishwashers and hostesses? No one's going to, buy Cartier bracelets for their girlfriend on that salary, right? How do you create a sense of community? How do you create a sense of belonging? How do you create a sense of pride in that business, that they're happy to be part of that business, that they're proudful to be part of that business? That's the thing you got to focus on. How do you treat your employees and your community well? And in essence, how do you share? And that's not saying you have got to give all your money away to them. But you want to be fair, and you want to create that culture. And the businesses that can do that win. And the businesses that try to grind their employees to dust don't win. And I think that's the lesson I learned. And you don't learn that in your 20s often. You learn that as you mature a little bit more, and you get a little more empathy, and you have a little more success.
Yeah, clap for that. Clap for that. And it kind of brings me into an interesting transition of, how do you create the culture? But in New Orleans, we have so much culture by default. The oldest city in America. My question to y'all is, how do you leverage existing culture to build brands? Because I think in the audience, a lot of us are New Orleans entrepreneurs. We have so many verticals, from music to hotels to restaurants. How do you leverage existing culture into your products and your brands in order to be successful? I guess, Larry, you could take that one first.
I would say you one of the things you got to pay homage to the culture in everything that you do. So when we creating concepts and we talk about culture, like New Orleans has some of the best cuisine in the world. We have our own cuisine, right? And when you look at our restaurants, like a lot of people, and this is a secret for restaurateurs, right? There's a lot of people who open up concepts in New Orleans that may do well, may not do well. But I know when you're attracting people, what's one of the things that tourists come to New Orleans for? New Orleans food, right? So I noticed when we opened up one of our concepts Monday, we didn't have oysters. When we first opened up, it wasn't too much New Orleans food. But one of the things that we did when we realized that everyone was coming asking for oysters, they was coming asking for just like New Orleans dishes, we pivoted. And the moment we did that, our sales increased because we gave the people what they want. If you're coming from out of town, you don't want to come down here and the first stop you make may be a Mediterranean restaurant, right? You come to New Orleans, you want to get New Orleans food. So when creating different concepts from Morrow's, right, that's a New Orleans style restaurant. When we opened up Monday, we made the pivot, but when we opened up Sun Chung, we didn't just want to serve Asian food, right? I wanted to pay homage to my grandmother's culture while also paying homage to New Orleans culture. So we did an Asian Cajun concept, right? You got gumbo dumplings, you got crawfish etouffee dumplings, crawfish fried rice, Korean fried chicken, crab ragoon dip. You got so many things that embody New Orleans and its culture to where if you're a tourist, you're intrigued by this, this concoction. So
what that said?
240 Decatur. Rosette, we could go after this. Nah, but we created a concept that embodied New Orleans, and it's so unique. Like, where in the country have you heard of like an Asian Cajun concept, right? Like, we didn't take this from anywhere. We created it, right? So then we went to, after that, we opened up, I think it was Morrow Steak. And Morrow Steak is just, us showing that we can pay homage to just New Orleans traditional dining, but elevate it in a sense and, show that we can also get into this elevated dining scene and succeed at it. But then after that, when it came to opening Spicy Mango, we like, all right, cool. We're known for doing fusion concepts. We did a Creole Caribbean fusion. You got oxtail red beans. You got oxtail dirty rice. You got the estaviche. You got all these Caribbean dishes.
But we got to go eat.
we're infusing New Orleans culture into it.
They said oxtail dirty rice.
Yeah. So we're infusing all these different, we're infusing New Orleans culture into this Caribbean culture, and we've seen a lot of success at it. Like right now, before we open up, we got a line outside. So I think just understanding what the people want and giving them what they want. So if they want New Orleans cuisine, it's okay to have a different concept, but just try to give them a little bit of what they want, right? And I think that's how we really utilize the culture and where we're from to really just the success of what Morrow Hospitality is.
Yeah, and it is so funny because we're usually the ones to export culture, but it gets monetized without us retaining ownership. And to kind of piggyback off your fusion concept, we did the same thing at Nutri-Grounds, but we did it musically, where we had jazz music, which is a traditional New Orleans genre. A lot of artists have been taken advantage of over the years in jazz. I think laws didn't get passed to where you can monetize someone after they passed away until like 2022. So you had people selling Louis Armstrong shirts and Allen Toussaint shirts, and the family wasn't getting ownership. So that same thing with bounce music. Bounce music is a really popular genre, but it's like a copyright nightmare because it's a culmination of 10 different songs in one. And we created Jazz Bounce as a fusion redesign of bringing these two cultures together. Let's monetize it correctly. Let's own it. So we trademarked it nationwide, and now we're paying artists, we're paying staff, we're producing records. So that type of fusion concept also goes into, how you monetize the actual culture. So I did just get a word over there that we want to open up for some Q&A.
First off, let me tell you, great job with that, right? Because you merging the two cultures, the jazz and the bounce. You created a new genre in New Orleans, right? So, Mike, I know you love jazz. I know you love bounce. Every time I go to his house, he got a New Orleans jazz player. I done seen Big Frida, there. Like, he really loved New Orleans culture.
Big Frida and I are tight. I want to give a shout out to my guy, DeVell Crawford. He actually introduced me to New Orleans music. He's out there somewhere in the audience.
DeVell's a legend for sure.
DeVell was a legend, and I literally fell in love with DeVell. Well, actually, I really didn't. It's a long story. But, and we brought, and we still bring, we got a gospel brunch in New York. We bring New Orleans spirit and soul into New York, and you're dead right. And now I got a house in New Orleans. I mean, it's partly DeVell, it's partly Larry, it's partly all of you guys. I was kidding around last night at that skating rink. It's the first time in 51 years I was on roller skates, and I did not do well. But I was walking around, and people were so friendly, and I thought, I think I have more friends down in Larry's community than I do in New York City. And so I want to thank you guys because you've accepted us. You've been friendly to us. I think all our Business Untitled fans are New Orleans based. And that makes me, I'm going to open some businesses up down here, right? It's that hospitality that you have shown me, that this city shows visitors, is infectious. And for New Orleans to go from here, and it's struggling some, to where it can be, literally takes everyone in this community being hospitable, using literally the fundamentals of hospitality to make people feel comfortable, to make people feel great, to understand their food, their culture, like to understand the difference between Creole and Cajun. And I think there's a huge opportunity because when I look, I've traveled to 96 countries and out 50 states. This is one of the most unique places, certainly in America, and it ranks as a top 30 unique place in the world. It's a top three unique place in the United States. Most cities in America suck. They're bland. I met someone from Kansas City today, and I was like, oh, sorry about that. Like, when I meet someone from New Orleans, I'm jealous. And so you guys should feel good about your city, and you got to build it up and shout from the mountains.
And let me say this, and not to get too personal, because me and Mike, we had conversations, and, he loves New Orleans so much. And, one of the things he told me was like, man, I want to figure something out for New Orleans. He said, I love this city. He said, I want to invest about $500 million into New Orleans communities. So y'all give it up for him for that, right? And it's just something that he said that he want to do it in the future. He hope he can do it. Well, you can't do it. He's worth a lot of money. But, it's something that he aspired to do and just really wants to just, pour into our city because he sees the opportunity and how much room there is for growth. And so he loves this city so much. And when I called him, I was like, yo, Mike, I need you part of this panel. He was like, all right, cool. Just send me the dates. And, I appreciate you coming down there.
Yeah, so we're going to do a quick transition into Q&A. So anyone got any questions?
Yeah, we got a couple questions right.
And Larry, I just want to say thank you so much because being here, I just owe it to myself to take this information and just keep going. And speaking of ownership, like Mike, like you, I want to be in private equity, but that can take a lot of money to get into. So I have a company called Firm 235 Marketing, and I realized that I can trade my marketing services for equity in a company versus just taking the money up front. So that's what I've been able to implement. And so being from Louisiana, we all know a lot about hurricanes. And Ross, I was able to read your book, Hurricanes. Legally, I understood why you couldn't do it, but you had me on the edge of my seat talking about the shootout scene that you didn't get to finish. But there's a question for all of you. With hurricanes, that could be like dark moments in our life. What helped you guys get through hurricanes in y'all's lives?
That's a great question. I unfortunately have had a few of them. And, I've been blessed with a big family. At one point, I was a young partner, rising star of Goldman Sachs, and they pulled me aside and they told me I was going to run the firm. And about 6 weeks later, I was unemployed. And it sucked. Actually, I went to rehab. I don't recommend rehab to anybody. But you start learning about yourself. And so when you fall down and it gets really bad, you got to dig in and learn about yourself. And what saved me was learning not to be embarrassed. Because I was like I would walk down the street in New York and I'd see people I used to know and I would turn my head down. And then finally I was like, hey, we all shit on the same toilets, right? And I was like, yeah, dude, I screwed up. I went to rehab. I learned about myself. I'm drinking still. And so it wasn't like it all worked. But the process of letting me be honest with people and say, yeah, I screwed up. I'm all right. It doesn't mean I'm a terrible guy. I did some shitty things, but I'm moving on. And someone came up on stage earlier today who had spent some time inside, and he owned it. And so much of how you get through dark times, and it's hard to do, is owning them. Because you go through dark times 90% of the time because of your own issues. Every once in a while you get struck by lightning, and that's I would put my heart and soul out to those people. But most people don't get struck by lightning. They have things in their past that creep up, and they screw up. We get too excited. We go on a gambling bender, and we lose all our money. We get too greedy, and we think, oh, this is going to make me rich. And so you all are going to screw up. It's okay. Own it. Be honest. And you don't owe everyone every dark secret. You don't. But you owe a story that you feel comfortable with sharing that allows you to walk around with a smile on your face. And that's how I got through hurricanes.
And then y'all want to take that question as well? Oh, y'all want to? Yeah.
I would say, for me, it's really just facing my problems. Anything I dealt with in life, just face forward and just getting through it. Like I would have, my big brother Ken and Jasper or Kenny Burns. They've been great mentors and brothers of mine. And anytime I dealt with anything, I would call them and just ask for advice on how to get through it because them being much older than me, they've experienced things similar to the things that I've experienced, and they were able to guide me through it. And a lot of times people try to run from their problems instead of running toward them because to start a new chapter, you got to close one. And I was speaking to a friend the other day, and he was just so stressed and felt like he couldn't go on with his life because of what he's been dealing with and what's been hanging over him. And it was hard to tell him this, but I'm like, man, you got to face that problem. And even though it may hurt, if you face it and you're able to close that chapter, you're able to start a new one. And that's when you can start a new beginning.
Ross, you got anything for hurricanes? Any advice?
When I look back at all the trials and tribulations I've ever faced, honestly, I know I can't remember 98% of that shit.
I love that.
So what it lets me know is to remain confident. You stay alive and you keep going. God is great. You won't remember this shit in 6 months. You won't remember it. You know what I'm saying? And that's just how I approach everything that I deal with. Straight up and down. Let's go. Whatever we doing, we go hard. When it comes to myself, what I do, my partnerships, how do I know you'll make a great partner? Are you willing to sacrifice it all to make sure we win? We gotta win. Fuck if your toe hurt. Fuck if your back hurt. You got an ingrown toenail. Fuck that shit, boy. We gotta win. And whatever we gotta do, let's make sure we do that. We'll thank ourselves later.
Right, and just to piggyback off of that, a lot of the problems, I use as fuel to the fire. And people, they want to know how, friends of mine, how do I deal with what I deal with? But I use it as fuel. I may go work out. And, it may sound like, you may go work out and you just feel better. But I really pour everything into what I do, my work. I'm when I got my heart broken as a teenager, I went harder. And that solved the problem, you feel me? And, same thing in life when I deal with something, it's fuel to the fire, and I go harder. I work out even more. I just, I align my spiritual, my physical, and my mental. And when you got all three of those aligned and you're dealing with what you're dealing with, all you're doing is strengthening your core. And so when you do face those challenges, it's like you prepare for them. You built yourself for them. So it's nothing that can really stop you. So you just got to just keep going, man. Just use it as fuel to the fire because, that's really helped me get past everything I've dealt with. And I almost feel like at this point, it's not too much that can get to me. and I'm able to overcome whatever gets in front of me as long as I just keep my faith intact, keep my physical and my mental and my spiritual just aligned.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. I'm going to send you his phone number.
All right, we have our last one.
Hello, y'all. My name is Courtney Williams. I made the pivot from being a television news reporter to now owning my marketing agency. One thing that I feel like every single one of y'all talked about is building your brand and really telling your story. Tell me, how important is it for all of the different entrepreneurs out here to really tell that story and market your business? How important is that?
Listen, I think storytelling is the most important thing about most companies. And I was lucky enough that my mother can talk and talk and talk. So I was born into a family of storytellers. And I actually, when I think about what I'm good at, you're not good at everything. I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm a good storyteller. And that's where I've leaned in. And so you got to learn, at least for your own company, to tell the story, why you're doing it, what it can be, what you're trying to do. And if you're not, it's okay, partner with someone who is. But every company, every brand needs a story. If there's an origin story, there's a reason, I look at Rick Ross, and he is the story, right? I mean, his every day I'm hustling. And so I wish I could sing. I wish I was a performer, because often the music is the story, right? Larry is building up his own narrative. And here's an interesting piece. Often you want friends to tell your story. I can tell Larry's story better than him, because if he starts telling, he sounds arrogant. And so you got a community where you've got people that understand your story and they tell it for you. But you got to have the story of your brand. And so I think it's the single most important skill to build companies and to build status.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'll throw something in real quick. So Novogratz is a marketing agency. We work with companies like Live Nation. We've done some work with Red Bull. And I tell every company that I work with that your story is your greatest asset. Usually when you have nothing else, you do have your story. And how do you leverage that to get what you need in life? When we did that competition and we won that prize money, we went up against companies that were way more successful on paper than what we were doing. We had no product, we had no users, we had no money, but we had a story. And that story allowed us to get the relationships and build the leverage so that we can, do the work that we did. So I always want y'all to realize that your story is your biggest asset. If you have a company, you can meet with me afterwards. We can talk about how we can sharpen your story up, maybe get you some visibility on Novogratz. But I want y'all to lean into that more than anything.
As far as, I love storytelling, because I think that, I know that just everything that we do, we like to do it with like feeling. Like, I don't just want to open up a location that can just generate revenue. Everything that we've built has come from a feeling and wanting to express ourselves in a certain way. And so, like with Sun Chung, like that was probably the location where, like, when we opened up, it was so emotional just the process, because I got to connect with my grandmother in a way I never got to connect with her. She got to tell me even more about her story, and I got like hour videos of just me secretly recording her and her crying, and it's like, that like just going through that process was just like a beautiful feeling. And when we opened up this restaurant, it wasn't just about serving food. It was about telling a story and inspiring people from all over, because my grandmother, she comes from Korea, and she left Korea to come to America because at the time her family didn't accept the fact that she had a daughter that was African American and mixed with Korean. And so she decided to leave and come to America and, build her family. And, for me, that was like, just one of the greatest honors, just to have a grandmother who, put so much aside to come to America and just build something for her family. And so I'm like, you know what? Like, I don't have a relationship with that side of my family. And so...
But that's where you get your good looks.
Yeah, you're probably right. My dad... No, let me shut up. Let me shut up. But And so I was, when creating this restaurant, it was about legacy. It was like, I haven't met nobody on that side of the family. So it was about preserving that legacy and telling the story so that my kids' kids can look back and say, hey, like this is what, like my great-great-grandmother was from Korea. She came to America and she established a family. And from there, my mom did X, Y, and Z. And from there, the son took it over, right? And from there, like, it's the greatest feeling ever just to know that my mom is proud of me, my wife's proud of me, my kid, my grandmother, and we're able to build something that's just deeper than money, And, like when you're doing it from a place like that and you're able to tell your story, that's what people fall in love with. When you're reading a book, you fall in love with the journey, the process, the story. And even myself, man, like I'm so passionate. I like to put so much feeling into the things that I do. So I make sure that I'm not just doing stuff just to make money. I turned down a lot of money, turned down a lot of investments. I turned down a lot of just opportunity that people presented to me just to preserve what we're building and to just do it in our own way. And I'm so proud of how we're doing it because we're controlling our narrative and we're able to, tell our story so that the world could, hear from the horse's mouth. Like, one more thing, like, there's a guy, Nola Zine, Derek Ogden. He wrote an article about me the other day for my birthday, and he said, I read the article, I'm like, wow. Like, I dropped some tears while reading it because out of every reporter, blog, nobody told the story how it actually was, right? They left out a few parts, but Darren, him seeing the journey since I started, he was able to tell the story word for word from the time that I started when I was 20 years old to now. And when I hit him up, I said, man, like, out of everybody that ever wrote an article about me, you've hit every point and you covered everything because he's seen it. And because of that story, people fall in love with your brand. People fall in love with who you are. And from there, that's how you build community and gain that support.
Larry, let me speak on behalf of Rick. I don't even know Rick, but I like Rick. I do like Rick. And this whole audience, and just say, we're all proud of you.
Congratulations, my brother. We wish, we support, and we see nothing but continued success in you and your brand. Believe that.
I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all, man.
Give it up for Larry Morrow.
So yeah, that concludes our panel, everyone. We're gonna take a couple pictures. If y'all need me, I'm gonna be in the back. I know Larry gonna be out too. You to highlight him, but
we're gonna take some pictures. But after this is not over, y'all want to just network them.
Actually, Larry, one of your friends just dropped in from Houston. He wanted to come drop some gems on the crowd. Junior Martins, come on up.
Oh, what's happening, Junior, baby?
He was a little late to the show, but he wanted to come out and speak a little bit. So do you want to give him an introduction? Let him know who we have.
Big man, take my mic.
We're going to do a group picture real quick. Y'all go ahead and do one. You want to let them all? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, will everybody stand up?
It's all right. Just let the big
yes.
Do your group picture. Do your group picture, Rose. All of y'all in there.
Stand to the side so you will.
Take a big man. Yeah. You're too big not to be in the space.
Right.
Look, he asked me, should I keep the glasses on? I said, yes, everyone has glasses. Keep the glasses on. It's a part of the mystique. It's a part of the brand, the story. Sorry, Mike. Mike, get Mike some glasses, please. Yes, there we go. That was it. That was what was missing. Rose, Mike is your biggest fan. Like, he is all about you.